I published something yesterday and it ranked on the top of page 1 2 hours later. For me, that direct impact and being able to publish a lot but then see the results so quickly, that kind of phase is really exciting.
In today's episode, we're joined by Sofia Tyson. Sophia is the Senior Content Manager at Juro, a B2B SaaS company specializing in AI-enabled contract automation for in-house legal and business teams. Her role focuses on leading the organic search strategy and its implementation. Juro's client roster includes well-known names like Trustpilot, Deliveroo, and Remote. Before her years at Juro, Sophia gained experience on the agency side, working with a variety of B2B and B2C clients. Today, she is a judge for the Global Content Awards and contributes to the State of Technology SEO report. Sophia is also featured in Startups magazine and frequently shares her insights on B2B content and SEO. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Digital Revolution podcast. I'm your host, Eli Adams. Today's episode is brought to you by FireUsMarketing.com, where SEO solutions pave the way to digital excellence. Welcome to the show, Sophia.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be on here.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you as well. As you know, when I approached you, we've talked about doing this SEO series where we have, multiple different areas of SEO that we cover. And I have the list now up to about 30 different sessions we're going to do with experts around the world talking about various topics. And your topic today that we're going to dig into, which I'm excited about, is SEO and B2B. And you have a decent amount of experience with that. So I am excited to dig in and learn from you on the SEO side. But before we jump into that, let's learn a little bit about who Sophia is. So where'd you grow up? What'd you want to be when you were little? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so as you can probably tell by my accent, I'm actually from England, kind of just a little bit north of London. So unfortunately not in the actual city, but yeah, to be honest with you, quite a normal upbringing. I guess like a little bit of complexity. Probably won't go into it too much, but because of trigger, but had a difficult upbringing at home, where there was like violence involved and things like that. And the reason I mention that is because, like you say, kind of what did I want to do when I was younger? It actually encouraged me to want to be a lawyer, which is quite the pivot from an SEO in B2B marketing. To be honest with you, like the journey kind of makes sense for me. I think probably with a complex upbringing, I was almost hiding that I wanted to do something creative because I thought that there was this big pressure to do something what's like successful or that would be stable, secure, things like that. And I guess becoming a lawyer is one of those things. I kind of wanted to be a lawyer from when I was younger. We had some experience of different lawyers when I was younger. A lot of lawyers very expensive, as I'm sure a lot of people know. And I just wanted to be able to provide that service almost naively to like family and friends for a lot cheaper. However, when I started kind of studying law at university, I quickly realized that you can't really change that much in the law as a lawyer. I found it as difficult, but really, really interesting. There's just so much to learn in law and all the complexities there. And to be honest with you, that aspect is not too different from content marketing and SEO. I realized in my second year that I didn't actually want to become a lawyer. I was super lucky. I had lots of work experience at different law firms. There's some really cool charities in the UK that kind of give students from underprivileged backgrounds really cool work experience. So for example, the Sutton Trust is one of them. And I just got to do lots of law firm work experience. Luckily, that's where I realized that maybe it wasn't the right fit for me. And perhaps it was maybe a bit too corporate for what I liked. And that was when I decided in my second year that I was going to kind of look into a career in marketing instead.
So you were in college to be a lawyer, and halfway through you decided, I'm going to finish this, but I'm going to go this direction. Is that right?
Yes.
So while you're working towards your law degree, that's when you dipped your toes in, like from a job standpoint, you went and got a job in marketing. Is that right?
So in my second year, I quickly realized I want to finish this law degree because it's a law degree and I want to have it. And I've got so far in it already, so I'm going to keep it. But I need to start looking at ways I can get marketing experience and quite quickly because there's going to be lots of people having done marketing graduate schemes and like internships to prepare, and I'm going to be behind. A law degree is great, but it's not a degree in marketing. So I kind of started up a blog on the side where I thought this is the quickest and easiest way to get writing and kind of broader marketing experience. So I was blogging very regularly, and I started writing for a company called Student Heart, where we just wrote articles for their website at what a student would consider quite good money at the time, and I would consider slightly bad money now. But yeah, it was just really great to be able to get that experience in my second year. And then I actually started looking at graduate schemes in my last year. So I actually wanted to go and be a brand marketer at a big company. And I graduated in 2020, so COVID. And all of the graduate schemes that I had initially applied to said, we're not going to accept anybody. We can't run our schemes. We can't even be in person at the moment. So I thought, okay, I'm graduating now and I have to find something else. And I actually got a really cool internship at an SEO agency, kind of local to my area. I think I actually got the job a few weeks before I graduated, which was really cool. And so no like real gap between there. And yeah, I started there. I actually didn't know what SEO was when I joined, which is great, but I quickly learned.
That's interesting. I've interviewed a handful of people who wanted to be lawyers, started law school, and a lot of them dropped out before they finished because they wanted to pivot towards something else. What is it about the way that your mind works to want to be a lawyer, to pivot? Why do you think that happens so often?
I think probably for me, the biggest overlap would actually be my love of writing. I have never written as many words as I did during my law degree. And I am a writer now, so that says a lot. And to be honest with you, that was a common theme. Like all my subjects at school that I chose were humanities subjects, like philosophy, politics, English, and then later going to study law. So I think there is big overlap there in terms of the actual skill and desire to want to write. I think what I realised when I was doing those work experiences, like that actual practical stuff, is a lot of it is not that much creative writing. It's, as you can imagine, often quite dull writing. And that for me was a big sign that this wasn't going to be the career that I thought it was going to be to begin with. There was a lot of reviewing documents, a lot of emailing, a lot of admin stuff. Today, Juro kind of serves to reduce that manual stuff. I just found myself thinking, like, where's the creativity and that kind of principles that I really wanted to change the law or change the way it was enforced. I realised, especially in corporate law, there's not that much opportunity to do that. And that creativity of trying to problem solve is a skill that's innate to lawyers. But I think you can use it in so many ways as a marketer as well. There was lots of signs that I was creative as a kid, like I love drawing. I thought I wanted to be a graphics designer when I was really young, which is a complete pivot again from a lawyer. For me, it was like a few things. I felt like I was neglecting the creative side of myself, but also that the writing side, I knew that I could get a lot more from marketing than I probably could in a law role as a solicitor or something.
What a cool story. What are you currently working on that excites you? When you wake up in the morning, you're like, I can't wait to do this. Like, what is that for you?
At the moment, we are going through quite an aggressive stage of adding lots of content to our website. We go through that stage a lot, but this is like supercharged at the moment. So we have, I think I might have like 8 different projects at the moment that I'm handling at different stages and executing. So just getting that shipped and seeing that impact. I think I published something yesterday and it ranked like on the top of page 1 2 hours later. Like for me, that direct impact and being able to publish a lot but then see the results so quickly, that kind of phase is really exciting, and that's kind of what I'm getting to do at the moment.
Let's dive into the tactical. I know that a lot of people listening love the tactical section. I know we have a lot to talk about. We've gone back and forth with some questions. I want to dive into it so that we make sure and have enough time to cover everything. So tell me first, how can SEO be used to generate leads specifically for B2B companies?
Yeah, so I guess the way I would think about this for B2B companies is that the B2B buying process is very different to the B2C buying process. Typically, obviously, it can vary quite a lot. It tends to be longer, more stakeholders involved, and also more opportunities to educate throughout the buying process because it is so complex. And I guess the contract values tend to be a little bit higher. Not true for all B2B versus B2C, but a lot of it. So for me, the key really is creating the content that delivers at every stage of that process. I know we can categorize it quite broadly into educational or transactional and things like that. But for me, it's thinking, okay, what questions do different prospects have at different stages of that buying process? Perhaps the sales team or something like we use Gong recordings can help me with a lot of that information. When do they need those questions answered? Who needs those questions answered? and then just addressing that with different bits of content throughout the funnel. And then that is basically how we would approach trying to capture all of their interests and make sure we're nurturing them throughout that whole big, long, often buying process. And then we just try and make content that actually ranks and converts for those queries.
So B2B SEO is heavy on the content then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm biased.
I mean, you're a content writer, and it works though, right? It's a difficult task to take on B2B versus B2C, and especially if it's like B2C e-commerce, then you have a product, you can talk about that one product, that's a tangible thing in most cases. You do keyword research around that one thing, and there's millions of people looking for that specific product, or that product is a solution to a problem that they have. Where B2B a lot of times is like one company looking for one thing from another company. So are there any other differences aside from just content when you're doing SEO for B2B?
I think the trust signals extremely, extremely important. Again, because if you think about the kind of people in a B2B buying process, maybe if it's software, you might see the legal teams are often involved. From a privacy perspective, for example, you'll see probably finance check in that those dollars are being spent effectively. And you would also see often procurement teams brought in. And that's where there's so many different people to please at different stages. And you really need to make sure that your website is equipped with the right information at the right time to do that. And beyond blog posts and things like that, it can just be smaller trust signals that you have on your website. So for example, we would have G2 badges because we're a software company with those. And then it can be other things like, do you have your security credentials on the website? Do you have author profiles, which are actually really important for SEO? There's a really big overlap between what SEOs call EEAT and then also the signals that people want without even realizing that anything to do with SEO. Making sure you've got all of those things on your website is extremely important. And it's even down to logos on the page, how you add markups to those so that they pull through in the right places in the SERP. I think trust is enormous. Obviously, it's important in a B2C process, but there are so many people in a B2B buying process that they're all looking for different things and they are giving you every reason to not buy your tool or your product. And you've got to kind of make sure they're implemented there.
I want to dig into the technical stuff, and we can talk about the author pages and the EEAT here in a minute. Before we get to that, if we can talk about maybe at a higher level, when you're getting ready to write content and you're doing keyword research, how does your approach to keyword research differ with a B2B company versus what you would do with a B2C company?
So one thing that I've realized is that often, again, not always the case, that B2B can have lower search volumes. You have to get a little bit more creative, again, with what you're going to write. And I also find, this might be a little bit controversial, the keyword research tools can only get you so far. Whereas I think because there's so many people searching in B2C, there's so much more data. I would actually say that the main difference for us is that we lean really heavily on our sales team and our CS team to give us those insights of what's actually being searched, because we have experience where something has told us that it's got 0 keyword volume and we have 6 conversions from that page a month to demo requests. So it's not 0 keyword volume. And if we just trusted those tools and they didn't produce those keywords, then we've been missing some really important keywords that are really high intent. So we actually have a lot of conversations with the sales team. Earlier at the start of the year, I sat down with the sales team. It was half an hour calls with each of them. And I said, can you tell me what content is being used now? Because generally speaking, there'll be a big overlap between what the sales reps are sending out, because they're the questions that they're trying to answer, and what those prospects would otherwise be searching. So I think that's a big thing that probably B2C don't do as often. Probably also because in B2C, there's less contact time between customer support and the buyer.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess I never really thought about that with B2B. There's a lot less search volume. Are there better tools to use than like the keyword planner when you're looking for search volume, or do you just have to look at it more as clusters and hope that there's enough search volume? How do you go about that?
Yeah, so we use Ahrefs day to day to enrich our keyword data and stuff like that, but it's not going to give you every keyword. And I think the important thing when you're trying to target people in a complex buying process is that you do target all of those stages, because you might be front of mind at the early stage because you've written content for that, but maybe they've got a question later and your competitor's written about it, but you haven't. or they're ranking for it and you aren't. And then all of a sudden they've diverted that attention towards their tool or their product. It's not that keyword research tools aren't a great starting point. I just think you need to enrich that keyword set a little bit more and go beyond the tools. As a starting point, I would just think, what do we want to be found for? And then do your keyword research from there. And that's where I'd start building out like, okay, so we have a core keyword or like a seed keyword. What variations are really relevant here? And then I would work back from there.
So we've heard throughout the years in SEO that content is king. I think that's changing a little bit these days. It's not so much about quantity as it is about quality like it was in the past, but I still see a lot of companies trying to pump out, 2 to 3 new blog posts per week or whatever. With a B2B company, let's say a SaaS company, you have one product with a handful of problems that it's trying to solve. How do you go about continually adding content without cannibalizing the content over time and writing the same thing over and over and over?
Yeah, so we are guilty of writing a lot of content in a week, but I think the difference is that we actually do put a lot of effort into those articles, and that's kind of how we make sure they're distinguished as well. Because if you were just pumping out generic content, then yeah, it's probably going to cannibalize other generic content you've got. So it's about finding those like unique angles. So if I give you an example of like how far you can take a keyword, so we have contract management software as one keyword, and then you can take it in so many different directions. So you can be like, okay, we can have a separate post on contract management software features, one on security, one on implementation, because we know we're a leader in implementation and it's a strong conversion route. And we also know there's a lot of friction with other providers on implementation. So it makes sense for that to be an idea. Again, it's not one we would have found in a keyword research tool, but it's one that we've heard come up a lot from the sales team. And then you can go down a different route. You could go like industry specific, look at your customer list. What industries are they mainly in? So you could have like real estate contract management software, you could have construction contract management software, and so on. And then you could go down the persona route as well, where you're like contract management software for HR teams. And to be honest with you, there's so many different angles. And when you make something that granular, you can write something so much more engaging and specific to that audience. And you don't really have to worry about the cannibalization because you're not covering the same thing. You're covering something quite unique and a lot more detail.
I think you touched on a really important point where you said we talk to the sales team and they tell us what problems are coming in, what people are saying, and then you look at that and write content around it. I think it's very important for companies to take that feedback, write content around it. Even if you were to go to the keyword planner and see there's not a lot of search volume, if your customers are asking your sales team about it, even if you get a handful of qualified leads, it's going to be worth putting the effort into creating content around that. So I love that approach. And I appreciate you bringing attention to that instead of just using all the keyword research tools, which is where you can start, especially if you're a newer company. But if you already have a process where you have a sales team or a feedback forum or reviews or whatever, use that data to push out new content moving forward. I like that.
When I say don't use the keyword research, use them at the beginning for those high volume keywords that have got that attractive keyword difficulty and that you feel like you're confident ranking for. I think use them then, but when you start to exhaust that actually good list, that's when you should move on to other avenues. And I think, like you say, just because they haven't got the really high volume, the contract value, again, like I said earlier, in B2B is often higher. So it's worth that for like a handful of people searching and converting on that page if they're high enough intent.
Yeah, I think we're also beyond ranking for one keyword at a time, right? I'll just give you a personal example, right? Like firesmarketing.com. I built it this year, like less than 6 months ago. I started blogging less than 6 months ago. I'm putting out 2 pieces of blog content every week. And I go into Google Search Console and I see it, my impressions have gone to 12,000 over the last 3 months. And what I see is it's not just one keyword that I tried to rank for. I've gone from 50 keywords ranking to 100 keywords ranking to over 400 keywords ranking. And it seems like every week I go and it's more and more and more keywords. And so you start to look at these big clusters instead of how it used to be a decade ago, especially in an agency life, which, you've done this, you would go and say, we're going to rank for 3 keywords you'll get them on the first page or whatever. But those 3 keywords, if you're doing content like you're talking about, are going to turn into 100+ keywords because of the different variations as well. So I agree with you. I use the keyword tool in the beginning to see some of that search volume. But my favorite way to do keyword research is the ABC method on Google. So you go to Google and you type in your keyword and then do a space and then do A and see what pulls up. And then you delete A and you do B and see what pulls up. And then I grab all of those and then I'll start to build content around those. Even if I put it into the keyword planner and it's very low search volume, I'm seeing on my website, I'm seeing higher impressions, higher click-through rates from those versus what Google is telling me actually has search volume.
Yeah, definitely. That makes a lot of sense. And it's a great way to do it. I think also going into a search console, like you say, and seeing what you rank for right now, but you don't rank for well because you didn't intend to rank for it, that original piece. Perfect. If you are struggling to rank for that keyword, then it's a clear sign that you haven't targeted it enough on that page. But if you're getting impressions, then people are searching for it. And that means maybe you should create a whole separate page to kind of target that keyword in more detail and actually rank for it. So I think as well, one thing that a lot of SEOs will probably agree with is that Search Console, one of the most affordable because it's literally free keyword research tools.
Absolutely. I love it. So if I'm a B2B company out there and I'm listening to this podcast trying to like gather some insights on how to improve my rankings online, let's talk about some maybe common challenges that B2B companies have when doing SEO. What are some of those challenges and how should me as a B2B company overcome those?
So I think a common one, I've already mentioned the length of the buying process, but also just so much harder to get conversions than it is for B2C because of that length of the buying process and the complexity. One, like I said, making sure you've got content at every stage is a challenge because you need a lot of content to make sure you're tapping into all of those different queries that people have at different points. And I think it's okay to prioritize to make sure you get there in the end, but you're not there straight away. Like trying to spread yourself too thin can be a bit of a problem, especially if the content that you're generating is poor and thin as a result of trying to produce too much. I think what you could probably do in the interim is create blogs that you briefly touch on those topics, and then you can see how do we rank right now when we include this in this page. And then if you think in the future you've got time to separate that into like more detailed and specific content on that separate topic, you can pull it out and cover it in a lot more detail. And I think although we're probably going to see some kind of departure from what people know as skyscraper method, where like you have an ultimate guide to this topic in every section, is I guess that's a pillar page. I think what you can do is you can start with a pillar page still if you are a smaller company or a B2B company without that investment in SEO yet. And you can still target those keywords, like you say, like you accidentally rank for them, even if it's not page 1, first position. Mm-hmm. You're still doing better than you would have been doing for those keywords for now. And you can see as well, like how much traffic really is there for that when you look at your impressions, and that's when you decide to separate it. I don't know if this might be controversial. Starting with a skyscraper piece of content is still helpful as a starting point, as long as you get in first and foremost what you really need to get in to make it convert well as well.
So a lot of the people who listen aren't really super tech savvy. They're business owners and they're like, I'm not confident in doing SEO. I imagine you said a handful of words that I want to talk about and dive a little bit deeper in. I imagine that a lot of business owners out there don't know what pillar page is or for content. Can you dig into both of those and give a little more context?
So a pillar page, I like to think of it as a web, and it's the most strong in the middle. So you've got like this middle bit of the web, and then you've got all of the cluster pages coming off of it. The pillar page should be the page that ties all of those clusters together. Perhaps it's your seed keyword, which is like the shortest and highest volume version of your keyword. Simplified terms. Like I said earlier, that for us it might be contract management software. And then you have those clusters where you build out more specific kind of variations of that keyword and guides that tie back to that. An example would be we have a page on electronic signatures, but we also have pages on how to sign contracts in Word, how to sign contracts in Google Sheets, how to sign them in DocuSign. So we have lots of little clusters that kind of come off. And the way I think of it, and actually I think probably one of the most powerful things in SEO is, it goes beyond SEO, but it's topical authorities. You have this page and it only gets stronger when you write about it more with different angles, because you're telling Google and readers, hey, I really know about this subject. I've covered it in a lot of detail. So yeah, that's your main page. And then you've got the weaker bits of the web, but they're not weak. They're just lower volume, but really detailed content that kind of supports that and links to it.
It's one of my favorite strategies, and I'm glad that you brought it up. I look at it as a pyramid. And when I talk to my clients about it, we say your main topic is at the top and then the rest of them are at the bottom and they tie up. And so the example that I always use is finance. So if you're going to talk about finance, that's at the top. And then underneath finance in this pyramid is savings and debt. And under debt, you're going to have home loans and student loans and credit card debt. And under home loans, you're going to have this type of home loan, that type of home loan, and they all kind of tie up. And so you have multiple pillar pages throughout your website, and they're all tying up to the next one. And those pillar pages are tying up to the next one. I think it's a strategy that used to be big 10 plus years ago, and people aren't using it as much now. And I don't know why, because I see it having a lot of success still. It's an easy way to get Google to understand how to crawl your website as well. It's good architecture, it's good structure, it's great explanation on pillar pages. Now, let's dive into what skyscraper content is.
So the way I know there's different ways to understand it. To me, it's like that really big piece of content. It covers everything. It's, again, like the ultimate guide. And I've written ultimate guides, but I've later gone and taken bits out of them where I think it's appropriate to push them into another space and make them more specific. It's just big. It's lengthy. You've probably seen the recipe stuff spoken about if you're an SEO, like, why is there so much content before you just tell me what's actually in the recipe, like how I make it? It encompasses everything and sometimes too much. I think that's something that is supposedly at threat with Google introducing what they call AI overviews as well, where it's generating its own response to very specific questions using generative AI. Your content might be lost if it's skyscraper because it is just too generic sometimes. I guess there was a time where the most words in a blog made it better, the most keywords, the most angles covered because it's more comprehensive. Like I said, those work until you have the time to build them out into smaller bits. But for me, skyscraper content is that long piece, the thing that tries to encompass everything.
Okay. So now I'm a B2B company and I've taken your advice on keyword research and on content, skyscraper content, pillar pages. How do you calculate and demonstrate the ROI from those SEO efforts for the B2B companies?
Yeah, so I come from a very privileged place when I say attribution, because I did not set that attribution up. But put it simply, for us, it's how much new business revenue is generated from organic search. Okay. And that could be, we see a deal come through. So for example, in Juro, when you get a contract signed, it automatically pulls into Slack and everyone is notified and everyone's super excited. We have that because we're using the technology. And when it comes in and it's new deal signed, company name, the revenue amount, and then it says the first page seen, I'm like, yes, that's organic search. Like, that's from that channel. So for us, we can really easily track exactly the dollars that come in revenue, but also in pipeline from those pages. And that, for me, is the best way to calculate it. Obviously, attribution is not sophisticated in every company. And like, even for us, there's still things that could be improved. We see some direct traffic kind of cannibalized or misattributed. But I think another way to look at it is customer acquisition costs. So which channels are costing you the most to generate customers? Again, it can be quite a simple calculation there, like how much are you spending on these channels to get a customer, and kind of segmenting them so you can see, for us, organic search is one of the lowest customer acquisition costs. So it makes sense that it's more scalable because we are a startup and we only have limited budget.
Attribution is a tricky beast to tackle. If somebody comes direct and they look at the website, they look at one of your beautiful pieces of content, and then they find you from social media, and then they go to organic, they search a question and find you, and that's when they convert. Which of the three should get the conversion, right? I've worked at companies where they've had very detailed ways of splitting up the percentages of who got what. And the other was where they just said the last non-direct click gets the credit. And so it can be challenging depending on what tool you're using and what sort of dev environment you have behind it. Attribution can be tough, but I agree it should be based on the bottom line. You can look at, from an SEO standpoint, you can look at the ROI, but you decide what the ROI is with your leaders. Is what you're trying to accomplish brand? Like, do you just need more visibility? Is it sales? Is it both? And so work with your leaders in the company and find out what's the most important from that SEO. And inevitably, it should have a dollar amount attached to it in the end.
I think it's also important to recognize the value of content that doesn't generate that dollar, though. That mid-intent or low-intent content that pushes people to that high-intent stage. Again, it can be really difficult to justify spending that time on that area. But I think a good way to put it is every time we build these pages, we get more traffic to the website, and that traffic can be converted later on because they become brand aware. But also, that content is building our topical authority, so that middle bit of the web that I spoke about earlier is strengthened by the little bits that kind of come off of it. Yeah, obviously I oversimplify it when I say like revenue from pages, but there are other ways that you can quantify that as well that aren't as harsh.
So I know with SEO, link building is a really big piece of the algorithm. How important is link building for B2B versus B2C? And then what are some techniques to go about doing link building specifically for B2B?
I would say equally as important for B2B as it is for B2C. It just depends on the competitiveness of your kind of area that you're in, because there are really competitive B2C and B2B niches as well. I guess it's more about that than it is about what you're in. If you had to ask me what my ideal way to build links would be, it'd be the way, because I am not a big fan of link building, it'd be the way that I don't have to do it, which is to outsource it to a digital PR agency where they get really great backlinks and create really engaging content assets on your website as a result. That's expensive, and it's something that we can't afford to do ourselves. So it would be wrong for me to say that's the only and best way. We've done lots of other things to get backlinks ourselves instead. So what we do is, I had a crazy few months where I was guest posting on behalf of executives in the company. I had them writing for like these really cool websites, a lot of them in SaaS, and they had really strong domain authorities, and I'd write on behalf of that exec team member about a certain topic that was relevant to their website, but also relevant to our content as well. So that was a really good way. Time consuming though, because you're writing a lot of content. You have to do a lot of discovery with that exec team member to make sure that what you say is actually reflective of their thoughts and insights. There are quicker ways. I use a tool it was called Turkle, but now it's called featured.com. I don't know if you've heard of that one. So yeah, you get your expert comments featured in lots of different websites as and when there are relevant questions for you. So I think I've had some in GoDaddy and some really big publications like that, just sharing an answer to an SEO question that I have. Those are really good ways to invest less time but still get a value exchange. So you're giving something to that website in exchange for backlinks. Okay. So I like that way as well. And then if you are lucky enough to get any PR, for example, for us, it's like funding rounds, make sure you really push the PR when you can get it, because those backlinks are super valuable, not only because they're really relevant, but they're also really strong domain authority. And they'll be helpful when you're hopefully trying to build a Wikipedia page or something like that as well. Those are the main ways. Obviously, lots of ways you can get PR, not just funding raises. If you're a big company, big product releases, things like that, or hires, just make the most of those opportunities.
Let's go back from the beginning. We talked about technical SEO. What are some key technical SEO factors that we should consider on a B2B website?
I'm trying to think of some that I've recently struggled through. So I think in general, the way I look at it is hygiene. Like website hygiene is the same as technical SEO to me. So making sure that everything links to where it's meant to link to, there aren't broken links, things like that. So we've had times where like somebody's changed a link on the website and not told anybody, and it's in like the header or the footer, and then before you know it, we've got thousands of links to 404s on the website, and our site health score is in the gutter. When you think of user experience, nobody can actually get to that page. That could be really important. especially if it's a key conversion page. So I actually think of technical SEO through the lens of user experience on your website a lot of the time. So as that, you can also get it with how many internal links to redirects do you have. It's just again, it goes back to user. It's a really annoying experience to not go to where you expect to go to on a website. And I think anything that kind of confuses Google from a crawling perspective as well, like you see Google's going through and just following all of these internal links to redirect, it's not going to keep crawling. It's going to get fed up. It's just not going to be as efficient as you would like it to be. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the key things. Keep everything neat. Everything needs to be clean, just how you'd like it for the user. Also applies to Google as well. And then we also have some other things like indexation, making sure things have got the right canonicals, which is, this is the page I want you to show. This page is similar, but this is the master page kind of thing. Just making sure things like that are in place, because if you don't, Google may or may not choose its own.
How important is page speed?
Uncontroversial opinion. I think it's important. Like, I do what I can to compress our images and make sure we've got things that are lazy load and stuff like that. But sometimes there's only so much I can do, and our pages still rank well.
I have seen differing opinions on that. I know that people put websites, when they're doing audits, they put them in these tools and it comes back with a low rating. But then I also see them ranking well. I see them getting tons of traffic, and there's probably a line in the middle where it's like, you don't need to focus all of your time on being the fastest thing out there. Because if you're the fastest thing out there, but your content's not good, it doesn't matter anyway, right? So you got to focus on good quality content, delivering what your audience needs, as well as working on that speed at the same time. So speaking of audits, what are some essential steps to doing an audit on a website? So again, let's say I'm a B2B company and I want to know where I'm at and where I should go. What are some essential steps to do an audit for a B2B company?
From a content perspective, I'll take this first. I would like to see what content you've got on your website. So pull in all of those URLs, see where they are kept on the website, and then you can do checks for duplicate content. Again, that's something that Search Console can pull out for you if you look in the errors section. I would also look at what are the URLs, are they clear? Are they covering the keywords that they're meant to be covering? Mm-hmm. And then I guess with an audit, you can go really far in content. So depending on the size of the website, I would look at the performance of different pages as well. And you can pull this data from different places. So I might pull ranking data from Search Console, but you might pull the other things like the errors from another tool like Screaming Frog, for example. And I would want to see like, okay, which pages are underperforming here, because they're the ones that we're going to deep dive into. If you don't have time to deep dive into all of them, those are the ones. A common way to do that is, okay, they're on page 2 in Google, or they're at the bottom of page 1. That's like the highest opportunity, because your content's good, but it could be better. Like you're in a position where clearly you're writing about the right thing. You've got strong content, especially if it's a competitive query. What can you do to get higher up there? And that's when I would look at the page in more detail there. So I guess I would filter it into a few different stages. For a website like ours, I would pull the URLs, and this was making me horrified thinking about how many it would be if we did a site audit anytime soon. But we did do this during a website migration. So I guess like same kind of thing. So we pulled all of them, and then we pulled the performance data so we could see how they were performing. And that was a really quick way to be like, okay, this page isn't really ranking for anything. It was created X years ago. One, we can either bin it or we can consolidate it. Or if we think that this keyword is still worth it, we can rewrite it. It's like going through all of those URLs, comparing the data on performance, also like date published if you have that data available, and seeing, okay, where are the biggest opportunities here? Because again, you can't do everything, especially if you're like in-house like me and it's a lean team and you've got thousands of pages. Yeah. You really have to be brutal in that prioritization in an audit. So that is how I would personally approach it. And then obviously you get deeper and deeper, and looking at content and auditing individual pieces is a whole nother thing.
Are there any questions you wish I would have asked that could potentially help clients in the B2B space?
Maybe like if you're just starting out with SEO, what would you do? And the way I would answer that is I would start with what's the one thing you really, really want to be found for? Like that seed keyword that's like the king of all keywords. Maybe you've got a couple of them, which is great. It's a great starting point. And don't be afraid to start writing that content, and be conscious that you might not rank for it straight away, because SEO takes time and you're going to need to build up that topical authority. I would start with that, and then I would start going after the lower difficulty keywords, those kind of cluster content and long tail keywords that we spoke about earlier. And I would just start gradually building it up, because it's kind of an incremental thing with SEO. I think you could have a couple of people on your website and probably none of them will rank for a competitive query because you haven't got enough. So I think building it up over time, but not being afraid to start. Don't put it off. I know it's hard in a small business, especially a startup where the targets are aggressive and it's like, oh, okay, we need results in 6 months. We need to see the perfect results within 6 months. And you're like, okay, well, SEO takes longer than that, depending on what you want to see. And then there will be a time where it does happen, like I said earlier in the day, same day, like results turn around. But first you have to actually start, and the longer you put it off, that you'll never do it.
Sophia, I appreciate you taking the time to enlighten us on your B2B knowledge in the SEO space. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I look forward to getting this out as part of this big SEO series. I think it's going to add a lot of value.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited to listen to the rest of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And to everyone else who's listening out there, we'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks so much for listening to the episode today. Listen, I know how valuable an hour of your time can be, and for you to take that busy time out of your day and spend it with us, it really means a lot. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider liking and subscribing on whatever platform you're on. And don't forget to leave a comment. Tell us what you thought about the interview. Ask us questions. Let us know what other digital topics you'd like to hear about in the future. We're here to add value to your life and elevate your digital presence online. If you'd like some help doing that, reach out to me at fireusmarketing.com. See you on the next one.